You're watching the 2021 Cadillac ESV, and I'm going to look straight ahead because this is what Cadillac recommends you do if you're using Super Cruise. Your hands can be off the wheel, you're looking ahead, and only if you're on a marked highway that's been mapped in ideal conditions. So that's what I'm doing right now. I tested the Escalade earlier this year against the Lincoln Navigator. Super Cruise wasn't available during our test. Now it is, and I'm going to show you everything this system does and doesn't do. I will also show you a bit about the rest of the truck because it's $115,000 and worth every bit of your attention. And mine. Months ago, I tested the new Escalade against the Lincoln Navigator. The Cadillac lost, but barely. Some of our viewers didn't agree, so I'm back solo this time with the longer Escalade ESV. I promised you another Escalade with Super Cruise, and I meant what I said. So let's skip to the good part. Right now, Super Cruise is the only true hands-free driving system that's available. That's what it's advertised at, that's what it's designed to do. Now, people in Teslas have been able to do this for a long time. A lot of other car makers have let you take your hands off the wheel on the highway using these systems, but they always require you to at least be holding it, applying some torque like this, so the system knows that you're not actually taking your hands off. But Super Cruise is a little bit different. It really is like the ultimate cruise control for the highway. It's not designed to do a lot of other things that you think it might do. And that means it's not going to get off this next exit by itself when you have the navigation on or off. It doesn't track every single car that's passing me right now. I have to do that. Construction zones, it'll let me know on the screen, but I have to be paying attention. Weather, open road, lane markings. There's so many instances in the owner's manual. It's page 281, by the way, and if you read it, you find out all the caveats. There's really actually very few things it can do, but what it does do, it does really, really well. It's $2,500 from the factory, but you need a 3-year subscription. That comes included with the Escalade. After that point, it can be up to about $50 a month. That includes OnStar. So basically what this does is it's getting you real-time traffic information, real-time data from the navigation system, and in case you have an emergency or you don't pay attention, OnStar gets notified. To activate Super Cruise, you basically have to have the cruise control on. So you press this button here on the steering wheel, and then another nice little pretty silver button right here. Little message pops up on the instrument panel, and there's a light on this bar here on the steering wheel. That's green. As long as it's green, you can now safely take your hands off the wheel. My hands are still really close because honestly, this is kind of a scary thing. This is a 3-ton vehicle going down the highway at about 70 miles an hour, and I'm not even doing a thing to control it. So it's pretty wild. Super Cruise was available on the CT6 sedan, but no one got to test that vehicle, and it's out of production now. So the Escalade really is the first Cadillac that anyone's able to drive and buy in significant numbers with this system. And since Cadillac came out with Super Cruise a few years ago, they've already improved it. There's about 200,000 miles of divided highways and interstates across the United States that are completely mapped. And by that, that means that the car knows exactly where it is, and it will only function like this if it knows that it's on the right road. So when you're doing that, it's pretty amazing. Most of this is software. It's actually using the same hardware as in any other Escalade. You have the forward radar, you have the 360-degree cameras. Now it won't use ultrasonic sensors. Tesla uses that. Cadillac is not using that with this system at all. So it really doesn't have any extra hardware that you need. This primarily is software. These are laser scan maps. It's not just a regular map coming from the navigation system. So what you're seeing now is companies that are going around with LiDAR, that's laser scanning, mapping roads to a precision that's about 10 times more accurate than regular GPS. To be honest, the accuracy on this system is very good. I've tested Teslas, I've tested Mercedes, BMWs, any car that's been out really since around 2014 when I was first in an Acura that had that system. This is really good. I'm not gonna lie. The problem is that it might be too good. And being in this situation, what if you look over here, I'm looking this way. Yes, it has an eye tracker here. Just me even doing this right now and talking to the camera, it makes me feel uncomfortable because this is a 6,000 pound vehicle going down the road at 66 miles an hour right now. I don't really want to do the physics calculation to tell you what happens to that when something goes wrong. There's also an automatic lane change feature. You can do that by activating the turn signal. It checks for you, and I'm checking too as it's working. And it says auto change lane complete. That's pretty cool. If it doesn't work, it will tell you not to do it. You can also cancel the automatic lane change while you're doing it. So that's pretty interesting. Right now, Super Cruise is disengaging. It just disengaged right now because the stretch of highway I'm on is not mapped. I don't understand why. I drove all the way from my home in Connecticut to Massachusetts, but it's just this little, about 5-mile stretch that Cadillac just doesn't have in its system. You can also disable Super Cruise temporarily by turning the wheel yourself, and the light bar here will turn blue to let you know that it is not steering by itself. Then when you let go, it'll turn green again. So right now, I'm driving on an exit ramp. It's very curvy. Super Cruise would automatically disable itself if I had it on, because the speed and the curve radius is just too great. So really, it's not going to do everything you're used to perhaps with a Tesla, but GM and Cadillac, they're not claiming that this is going to do everything that Tesla does. Tesla, I think, has made some very misleading statements, and a lot of the owners have been doing things that are so dangerous. They've been driving into emergency vehicles because they've been eating bagels. I'm not making that stuff up. You've seen videos, you've read the stories, it's all out there. The problem with these systems is that a lot of people don't watch videos like this. They're not trained properly. They don't know what the system can or can't do. They press the button and they assume everything is going to work all the time. And that's what you can't do. So that makes me a bit nervous with Super Cruise and other technologies that are going to be like it, because I don't think that the vast majority of drivers are really prepared for what these systems do and what they don't. There's an infrared eye camera looking at my eyes to make sure that I'm actually paying attention. It actually knows if you're darting around. This is all just to make sure that you're actually looking ahead as you should be. So I'm going to do and demonstrate in this emptier section of highway is if you cover this sensor, eventually the steering will go to red and then disable itself. It's flashing green. If I still don't take control, it's going to be very upset.
Take control of the vehicle now.
Okay. And now it's actually locked out, so I cannot engage this again while I'm driving unless I shut the vehicle off and turn it back on. Might seem like a bit of a nanny feature, but that's how you learn your lessons. The only odd thing is that the instrumentation is very limited on here. I like the steering wheel bar. I can see that there's a green steering wheel icon and that cruise control is active. I also see that on the head-up display. But beyond that, there's nothing else telling me what the car is seeing. As much as this system is doing things for me and it's so easy to operate, well, there's a lot of trust going on here, you know? And I know these systems are on, but I don't really know what they're looking at. I can see there's a truck right here. I know there's 2 trucks ahead of me, another vehicle in that left lane. But I have no idea what the car is actually sensing and what it's not sensing. So that's the only disconcerting part while you're using it. I wouldn't use this system in Manhattan stop-and-go traffic, anywhere where it's really busy. It'll still activate and work for you. What Super Cruise really is, though, it's probably the ultimate road trip tool. If you're on an empty highway and you're seeing, say, 3 cars for the next 100 miles, well, this is really what it's going to work best for. And I've driven across the country a few times. And honestly, if I had a system like this helping me out, not doing everything for me, but just taking some of the load off of driving and driving 8-10 hours a day, I would like it. I really like the Lincoln Navigator, but in terms of technical sophistication, this is the finest American vehicle probably ever made. The screens are the most impressive part of the interior. You can tell all the detail that went into it, including all the leather that stretches over each one of these parts. Now, they're actually separate screens. There's a small one over here, that's for trip odometer, and it changes the instrument cluster right here. So I can go from the standard display to a full screen map, to augmented reality. That is pretty amazing. It shows a very high-res version of the front camera. It'll also overlay directions. I'll show you that in a bit. Plus night vision, which will also outline pedestrians in the dark. This whole thing is over 3 feet wide. The main screen is tiled. It even has these diagonal look here. It kind of matches the wood, but it also is a carousel. I can use the rotary controller down here. If I put my hand near, it has a proximity sensor. So it does it both ways. It senses it. It's pretty interesting. There's also a feature called conversation enhancement. Now what that does is that when I'm talking right now, the people in the back can hear everything I'm saying and I can hear them. It's kind of like the intercom feature on some other vehicles like the Toyota Highlander, but it's a little more subtle. And I tell you, when someone's in the third row and they're just talking like this, you really can't hear it. So that's nice as well. If you're on a phone call, for example, or if you're using the voice recognition.
What would you like?
I'd like to find some barbecue.
Okay, searching for barbecue. Okay, I'll cancel.
And the air goes right back up. Really subtle little things like that make a big difference, so you don't have to talk over anybody. There's power deployable running boards, but in the Escalade there's a setting to keep them open, so you can step on it while you're washing the truck's roof. Another nice thing, the suspension will automatically lower when you put the vehicle in park. That makes stepping up into it and out of it a lot easier. One of my favorite features here is the AKG stereo, particularly the surround mode. So you can choose front or rear in terms of where the priority is in the vehicle. When it's in the rear, you can barely hear it in the front. That's very useful when people are playing movies in the back and then you can't watch it and you don't even want to hear what's going on. You can have that for the folks back there, but when you want to listen to your favorite music, it gets super loud. Cadillac doesn't even tell you what the wattage is, but you can go from regular stereo to then surround 3D, and that does activate these speakers in the headrest and the ceiling. It really is incredible, and it'll probably blow your eardrums like you're at a concert, so don't keep it on too loud for too long. Overall, the whole system is fast, the graphics are sharp, they're simple, really easy, high contrast. You can't really say anything bad about the design of this infotainment system. I've got a suggestion for any future software updates. Let's make the standard gauge layout on this instrument panel have some more customization. Right now, the only thing you can see is the speedometer in the center, and there's very limited control over the left and the right-hand side. It's there, but there's not much going on. And also, maybe a voice assistant. You know, Mercedes and BMW, you can call out their names, but on second thought, they're kind of nosy, so I don't really mind that. These front seats, not only are they very comfortable, but there's 2 speakers in either of these headrests. And there's 32 throughout the entire cabin. That means there's 36 of them in total. And who doesn't like a massage? Some gliding action maybe? Maybe you like a little relief? Well, you can turn that off, and you can also switch to the lumbar, side bolstering, and 2 different ones for the top and the bottom. There's a lot of adjustability here. Plus they heat and cool and move in 16 different ways. The wood, it's custom furniture. Check out the diagonal inlays here, each individually stained. The leather is super soft. The doors and lower dash are this beautiful fabric. The roof, micro suede. I feel like I shrank and I'm living inside a designer handbag. But it's not a bag. It's a city block, and it's all yours. Legroom, headroom, your bedroom. It all fits inside the Escalade. I'd like this second row to be power reclining and offer a center console. I'd like them to cool, but they only heat. These are the parts that feel less special. Else, you can send some directions to the driver from back here and play or stream anything from these screens. And a few details don't work anywhere. These window switches, the gear selector and all the plastic buttons, the overhead console, the stalks, they're all pulled from Chevys, which shouldn't be allowed anywhere near a Cadillac. When you open up the tailgate, you've got 143 cubic feet back here. That's one of the biggest cargo holds of any light-duty vehicle you could buy. Cadillac model names come and go, but the Escalade is the one that everybody knows. And with a grille like that, it could essentially put a brandishing mark right here on my forehead. That's how gigantic it is. It looks like I cook a steak on the front of that thing. If you have the premium luxury platinum, that's the design you get. You can get a black mesh on the Sport or some little scattered chrome like on Mercedes models if you get the regular premium luxury. Every model gets 22-inch wheels, and compared to the giant grille, these LED lights are actually really small. These lights are really tall. The ones in the back, the taillights, those are 3 feet high. And the whole vehicle is just gigantic. This is the ESV, which means it's the longer Escalade. The wheelbase is just over a foot longer, and the whole truck is 1.5 feet longer. We're looking at right now is essentially a cruise ship coming into port. And there's really not much a car designer can do to make something this slab-sided and rectangular look elegant. But Cadillac designers have done that. This vehicle is just instantly recognizable, and when you pull up with one of these things, everybody's gonna see you, and that's the whole point. There's one other thing we gotta do, and it's take another drive. If you're watching this during a gas shortage, I'm really sorry. It's all my fault. I used all the gas in New England for this video just to have this car running. So again, I'm sorry. It is what it is. Yeah. Well, 6.2 liter V8, that's the sound of that. 420 horsepower, 460 pound-feet of torque, 10 gears, 4-wheel drive, 14 mpg city, or less, or more. Who cares? You got a ton of money. You got a ton of money for everything when you're driving this car, or at least you're supposed to anyway. If you're making car payments on something like this that's 72 to 84 months, I would say you might want to reconsider your bills, right? But let's assume that you can drive this car every day. You will be excited to it because it's a V8. Who doesn't like a nice big V8? God. When you're not on it though, it can actually deactivate up to 6 of the cylinders, which means that you actually save a lot of fuel. The great thing about these General Motors V8s is the fact that they actually are pretty efficient for vehicles of this size. And they're actually just as efficient as a lot of turbocharged 6-cylinder engines. Cars like the Lincoln Navigator, other vehicles like the Ford F-150, for example, are relying on those smaller displacement engines with turbos. But when you actually have to put them under load, they're not as efficient as you think. What's amazing about the Escalade is that the steering is actually good. It's like, why would they go through all this effort on a vehicle that's really just meant to shuttle people to airports and to, private parties in Los Angeles? Why would they go through the effort of making the steering so direct and controlled and make this thing like a smaller vehicle? I'm glad they did. I really am. Because the level of confidence you get in here is kind of inspiring. I mean, it's just like, I'm aware at all times of how big this thing is, how heavy it is, how careful I have to be when maneuvering it in a lot. But when you're on the open road, it shrinks a bit in size. You can't use the paddle shifters. That's kind of weird, only because the drive shifter has to be in L for these to activate. That's really my only real issue with this thing. Acceleration's great, sounds good, and when you're not on the gas, it's very quiet and insulated in this thing. I mean, this thing is a giant bread box that honestly, in years past, something like this, you would hear everything going on inside, but they've got like essentially foam and, I don't know, pillows and whatever other stuffing that they're throwing in this car. You don't hear much. And with the air suspension and the MagneRide dampers, those are the Magnitude, I don't even know how to spell it or pronounce it. They're magnetic, and what that means is that it changes the viscosity of the fluid in the damper within milliseconds. Boom. You can get firm, you can get soft. It's analyzing the roads so much. So combine those technologies with the fact that these are very wide tires and the chassis is actually pretty nimble for a vehicle this size. And in any situation, the Escalade just feels planted, it feels controlled, and most of all, it does feel very comfortable. Yeah, that's satisfying. Satisfying again. Brake pedal feel does require you to kind of dip in a little bit, but it's controlled and it feels pretty good. At the end of the day, America only makes one really advanced vehicle. It's not the mid-engine Corvette, it's not the Mustang Mach-E, it's a Cadillac truck. Really, the only thing unimpressive about it are some of the interior parts. They remind me too much of the Yukon and the Tahoe that cost a heck of a lot less than $115,000. But other than that, everything else about the Escalade really does make you feel special. And there's not that many competitors. Lincoln Navigator, the upcoming Jeep Grand Wagoneer, maybe the Infiniti QX80, and that's it. Nothing else is as big as this vehicle and as sumptuous, and considering the size, it drives really well. So that's all I got. That's 2 Escalades for you in 1 year. That's a personal record. CarGurus has a lot more reviews of this vehicle, every other SUV you can imagine. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and go online to cargurus.com to search for your next vehicle. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.